Your toes feel like they're on fire the moment you lie down. Your fingers go numb for no apparent reason in the middle of the day. A sharp electric sensation shoots through your legs without warning, and every specialist you visited shrugs it off. What if the real culprit isn't a mystery condition, but something sitting on your kitchen counter right now, something you might even consider part of a healthy routine? What if that one thing has been quietly eroding your nervous system for years? This isn't a conversation about masking symptoms. This is about identifying the source of the damage and cutting it off before your nerves reach a point of no return. Give me the next 20 minutes, because what I'm about to share could be the most important thing you hear this year, not just for your comfort, but for your long-term independence. I'm Dr. Richard Holloway, and over the course of my career working with older adults, I've focused specifically on one of the most misunderstood and undertreated conditions in senior health: peripheral neuropathy. The tingling, the burning, the numbness in the feet and hands, the sudden loss of balance that makes people afraid to walk across their own living room. I've seen it rob people of their freedom, and I've seen people stop it in its tracks when they finally understood what was really going on. Here's what frustrates me most. The majority of people I work with were given the same explanation by the time they reached me. It's your age, or it runs in your family, or simply, this is something you'll have to manage. And in many, many cases, that explanation was simply wrong. Before we go further, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your age, where you're watching from, and whether you've been experiencing any tingling, numbness, or burning sensations in your extremities. Also, did you know that blood sugar levels can be destroying your nerves even if you've never been diagnosed with diabetes? Write your response below. Awareness is not optional here. It's the very first line of defense. And once nerve deterioration reaches a critical threshold, the window for meaningful intervention closes fast. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. I put out strategies like this every week, specifically designed to help people over 60 not just survive, but genuinely thrive. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Frank. 68 years old. Recently retired, still physically active, the kind of person who wouldn't have seemed like a candidate for serious nerve problems. But his feet burned every night. His toes went numb before noon. And occasionally, a bolt of pain would shoot up through his legs without any provocation. Multiple doctors told him it was probably circulation, probably age-related, probably just something to monitor. When we went deeper, we found something specific. A daily exposure he considered harmless, even healthy, was generating repeated toxic insults to his peripheral nerves. When we eliminated it, his symptoms didn't disappear overnight, but they stopped getting worse. And for someone on the edge of losing their independence, stopping the progression was everything. So what was that exposure? And why are so many seniors unknowingly repeating it every single day? To understand the answer, you first need to understand something about nerve tissue that most people have never been told. Nerves are not cables. They are living, metabolically active structures that require a constant supply of oxygen, nutrients, and chemical stability to function correctly. And unlike muscle or skin, they have an extremely limited capacity for self-repair. Damage doesn't announce itself immediately. It accumulates quietly, invisibly, often over years, long before the first tingle, long before the first burning sensation at night. Now, here's the part that surprises most people. The most destructive poison working against senior nerve health is not an industrial chemical. It's not alcohol. It's not even a pharmaceutical. It is something far more ordinary, something many seniors are actively encouraged to consume more of. The single greatest threat to your peripheral nerves is chronic blood sugar toxicity. And the critical point here is this: you do not need a diabetes diagnosis for blood sugar to destroy your nerves. You only need repeated spikes, and millions of older adults experience those spikes daily without any awareness that it's happening. When blood sugar rises too sharply, sugar molecules begin to bind to nerve fibers and to the fragile capillaries that supply them with oxygen. This triggers a cascade of inflammation and oxidative damage that degrades the myelin sheath, the protective coating that allows nerves to transmit signals cleanly. As that coating breaks down, signals become distorted. Tingling begins, then numbness, then burning, then pain, then the balance problems that lead to falls. And one of the most dangerous myths surrounding neuropathy is that it appears suddenly. It doesn't. It develops over years of silent, cumulative damage, while most people believe they're fine. Here's a question I want you to sit with. Have you ever been told your blood sugar is a little elevated or that you're borderline and then sent home without much follow-up? That borderline zone is where nerve damage often begins. Research now confirms that prediabetes causes peripheral nerve damage at rates nearly equivalent to full type 2 diabetes. The difference is that most people with prediabetes don't know they have it, and most are never warned about the neurological consequences. And this is where I have to be honest with you. When I tell patients that blood sugar toxicity is likely damaging their nerves, the first response is almost always the same. But I eat healthy. I understand that response. I've heard it thousands of times, and I believe people mean it sincerely. The problem is that the poison is not obvious. It disguises itself inside foods and habits that carry a healthy reputation. Let me walk you through the exact mechanism so you can see it clearly. You consume something that causes a rapid rise in blood glucose. Your pancreas releases insulin to clear that sugar from the bloodstream. Over time, with repeated exposure, your cells begin to resist insulin signal. Blood sugar remains elevated for longer periods between meals. The long peripheral nerves, the ones that run to your feet and fingertips, are particularly vulnerable because of their length and their dependence on tiny blood vessels for oxygen delivery. Those vessels become damaged. Oxygen delivery drops. Nerve fibers begin to slowly starve. Because this process is gradual, people rarely connect the symptoms to the cause. It came out of nowhere, they tell me. In reality, it has been building for a decade. A question I'm often asked is this: if blood sugar toxicity is so damaging, why doesn't everyone with elevated glucose develop neuropathy? The answer lies in duration of exposure, frequency of spikes, and individual nerve resilience. Some people's nerves tolerate the assault longer, but there is a threshold, and once it's crossed, symptoms don't just appear, they accelerate. So where does this daily poison actually come from? The first major source is liquid sugar. Fruit juice, sweetened coffees, sports drinks, commercial smoothies, even those marketed as natural or nutritious. When sugar arrives in liquid form, there is no fiber to slow its absorption. It enters the bloodstream almost immediately, creating sharp, high peaks that are particularly harmful to nerve tissue. Seniors are frequently told that juice is an easy, gentle source of nutrition. In reality, it may be one of the fastest ways to accelerate nerve damage. The second major source is refined carbohydrates consumed in isolation. Bread, cereal, crackers, white rice, pasta when eaten without protein or fat. These foods break down into glucose rapidly. The speed of that conversion is the problem. Older adults are often guided toward easily digestible foods, but digestibility and rapid glucose release are often the same thing, and rapid glucose release is exactly what nerves cannot afford. The third source is continuous snacking throughout the day. When there is no break between eating, insulin levels remain persistently elevated. Nerves never get a recovery window. They remain in a state of chronic chemical stress. Grazing even on foods that seem harmless denies nerves the metabolic stability they need to maintain their structure. Now here's something that almost nobody talks about in this context. Certain commonly prescribed medications silently deplete the nutrients that nerves depend on. Proton pump inhibitors, the acid-blocking medications millions of seniors take daily, can impair B12 absorption over time. Certain diabetes medications and cholesterol-lowering drugs can also reduce levels of critical nutrients. B12 is arguably the most important of these because it is directly responsible for maintaining myelin, the protective sheath around nerve fibers. When B12 falls, nerves become fragile, exposed, and prone to misfiring. I worked with a woman, I'll call her Susan, who had experienced progressive foot numbness for several years. Every provider she saw attributed it to aging. When we finally ran a full nutritional panel, her B12 was critically low. The cause wasn't her diet. It was a medication she had taken reliably for years, trusting that it was safe. Once we corrected the deficiency, under medical supervision, the progression stopped, not reversed, but halted. For her, that was the difference between walking independently and not. Neuropathy is almost never a single-cause condition. It's typically a convergence blood sugar toxicity acting as the accelerant, with inflammation, nutrient depletion, and compromised circulation feeding the fire. But blood sugar toxicity is the common denominator. It is the factor most consistently present and the one most consistently ignored in mainstream senior health conversations. This matters enormously because nerves have a tipping point. Early damage produces tingling and mild numbness, inconvenient but manageable. Advanced damage produces chronic pain, severe balance impairment, fall risk, and eventual loss of independence. Nerve cells that die are extraordinarily difficult to regenerate. The window for intervention is real, and it is finite. What I want you to take away clearly is this: neuropathy is not always reversible. But, in a substantial number of cases, it can be prevented from advancing further, and that preservation of function is worth everything. If this is resonating with you so far, take a second and hit the like button. It helps this information reach the seniors who need it most and may never hear it anywhere else. So, if blood sugar toxicity is the poison, what is the antidote? What actually protects nerve tissue? What can you begin doing this week that will make a measurable difference? The answers are less complicated than most people expect, and that simplicity is actually why they're so often dismissed. The foundational step is blood sugar stabilization, not aggressive reduction, not obsessive tracking, stability. Nerves don't require perfect glucose numbers, they require consistent ones. Every sharp spike in blood sugar is a chemical insult to nerve tissue. Reducing the frequency and intensity of those spikes slows damage. In some cases, it stops it entirely. The single most important dietary principle I teach in this context, and one that almost never appears in mainstream health advice, is this: never eat carbohydrates alone. Not a piece of fruit, not a cracker, not a bowl of cereal, not a slice of bread. Carbohydrates consumed without protein or fat enter the bloodstream rapidly. The resulting spike triggers an insulin surge, and during that spike, nerve repair is suspended. When carbohydrates are paired with protein or healthy fat, absorption slows significantly. The blood sugar response flattens. The same food that harms when eaten alone becomes dramatically safer when eaten strategically. This single principle explains a pattern I've observed throughout my career. Two people with nearly identical diets, one developing severe neuropathy, one not. It's often not what they eat, it's the structure of how they eat it. Let me give you a concrete example. I worked with a man, I'll call him James, 74 years old, who came to me with leg weakness, burning feet at night, and toe numbness that worsened by early afternoon. He was convinced he was eating well. Every morning he began his day with a blended smoothie: banana, mango, pineapple juice, and a spoonful of yogurt. He thought of it as a health ritual. What was actually happening was that within 20 minutes of waking, a concentrated wave of liquid sugar was flooding his bloodstream before his body had any metabolic buffer in place. We replaced the smoothie with eggs and sautéed vegetables. We moved a small portion of fruit to later in the day, eaten after a protein-containing meal. Within a month, his burning had decreased noticeably, his balance had improved, and his energy was more sustained throughout the day. No supplements, no procedures. We simply stopped delivering the poison. The second concrete step is eliminating liquid sugar completely, not reducing it, eliminating it. Juice, sweetened beverages, commercial smoothies, flavored waters with added sugars. Even juice labeled 100% natural is concentrated glucose without fiber. Fiber is what regulates absorption. Without it, sugar enters the bloodstream at a rate nerve tissue cannot safely tolerate. If you enjoy fruit, and you should, it offers real nutritional value. Eat it whole, in modest portions, and always after a meal that contains protein. Fruit eaten after protein is metabolically very different from fruit eaten alone on an empty stomach. That distinction matters more than most people realize. The third step is targeted nutritional support for nerve tissue. Nerves depend on specific micronutrients to maintain their structure and transmit signals accurately. Vitamin B12 is the most critical. Its role in preserving myelin is irreplaceable, and deficiency in older adults is far more common than most realize, particularly among those on acid-suppressing or metformin-based medications. Magnesium supports the electrical stability of nerve membranes and helps reduce cramping and involuntary twitching. Folate works synergistically with B12 in protecting nerve architecture. Alpha-lipoic acid has demonstrated in clinical research the ability to reduce oxidative stress within nerve tissue and has shown meaningful improvement in neuropathy symptoms for some patients. These nutrients do not reverse advanced nerve damage, but they protect what remains, and that protection can be the difference between slow decline and maintained function. One important caution here, and I will not skip over it: more is not better. High-dose B6, for example, is one of the more common nutritional mistakes I see taken with good intentions. It can actually worsen peripheral neuropathy when consumed in excess over time. Supplementation without testing and guidance can cause harm. Please consult your physician before starting any new supplement regimen, especially if you are currently on prescription medications. The fourth step is reducing chronic systemic inflammation. Inflammation doesn't just damage nerves directly, it sensitizes them, amplifying pain signals so that mild nerve irritation produces severe, burning, disproportionate pain. Ultra-processed foods, refined vegetable oils, and excess sugar all sustain inflammatory signaling. Fatty fish, extra virgin olive oil, leafy vegetables, and anti-inflammatory spices like turmeric support the opposite, a quieter, less reactive nervous system. The fifth step is deliberate, low-intensity movement, and I want to be clear that this does not mean strenuous exercise. Intense activity can actually aggravate symptoms in people with active neuropathy. What nerves need is circulation. Gentle walking, particularly 10 to 15 minutes after a meal, reduces the post-meal blood sugar spike and improves microvascular blood flow to peripheral nerve tissue. This is not a minor benefit. It is one of the most consistent and accessible interventions available. I want to speak directly to something I encounter constantly, because it is one of the most damaging forces in senior nerve health. Many people come to me already defeated. They've been told their neuropathy is permanent. They've internalized the idea that nothing can change, and so they change nothing, and the poison continues unchecked. That belief is dangerous. Not because I want to offer false hope, but because the difference between "this cannot improve" and "this can be stopped from worsening" is enormous in terms of quality of life. Less burning at night means better sleep. Better sleep means less inflammation. Less inflammation means slower nerve deterioration. Stopping the downward spiral has compounding benefits, even if the word reversal doesn't apply. I had a patient in her early 70s who arrived at my office using a cane, terrified of falling, and convinced that her neurological situation was fixed and terminal. She had been told there was nothing to do. When we stabilized her glucose patterns, corrected her nutritional deficiencies, and removed liquid sugar from her diet entirely, her pain levels dropped enough that she began walking short distances without the cane. She didn't become pain-free, but she stopped being afraid of her own legs. She went from managed decline to reclaimed confidence, and that is not a small thing. Neuropathy is not only about pain, it is about proprioception, your ability to sense where your body is in space. It is about the split-second reflexive corrections that prevent a stumble from becoming a fall. It is about the feedback between your feet and your brain that allows you to navigate the world confidently. When that system degrades too far, fall risk climbs sharply, and falls remain one of the leading causes of serious injury and rapid health decline in older adults. This is why the timing of intervention matters so profoundly. A mild tingle is a warning signal. It is not a verdict. It is your nervous system asking for help before the window closes. Let me give you a clear, practical plan you can begin implementing over the next 2 to 4 weeks. First, Eliminate liquid sugar from your diet entirely. No juice, no sweetened beverages, no commercial smoothies, regardless of how they're marketed. Second, never eat carbohydrates without pairing them with a source of protein or healthy fat. This applies to every meal, every snack, every time. Third, if you eat fruit, eat it in small quantities. After a meal, never alone on an empty stomach. Fourth, walk for 10 minutes after at least one meal per day. Start there. Consistency matters more than intensity. Fifth, ask your doctor to test your B12 level at your next visit, especially if you take any acid-reducing medication or metformin. Sixth, review your current medications with your physician and ask specifically whether any of them may be depleting micronutrients that affect nerve function. Do not adjust or discontinue medications on your own. Over the following weeks, pay close attention to your body. Many people notice a reduction in nighttime burning, improved sleep quality, and better daytime steadiness within the first few weeks of removing the primary sources of blood sugar toxicity. Even modest improvement is meaningful. It tells you the damage has not yet calcified. I want to close with something I feel strongly about. Anyone who tells you there is a guaranteed cure for neuropathy is not being honest with you. But anyone who tells you that nothing can be done is equally wrong and potentially more harmful, because that message leads people to stop trying. The truth is in the middle, and that middle ground is where real, meaningful change happens. Your peripheral nerves are among the most important systems in your body. They are what allow you to feel, to move with confidence, to maintain your balance, to remain self-sufficient. Once damage becomes severe, recovery is genuinely difficult. But if you intervene before that threshold, if you identify the poison, remove it, and give your body the nutritional support it needs, you have a real chance of preserving the function that makes independent life possible. Before you go, leave a comment below. Tell me your age, where you're joining from, and whether you've been experiencing any of the symptoms we discussed today. Have you been told it's simply aging? Have you already tried pairing your carbohydrates with protein or cutting out liquid sugar? I read through these comments personally, and your story may be exactly what someone else in this community needs to hear. If this changed how you think about what's happening in your body, share it. There are people in your life right now who are suffering through neuropathy symptoms and have been told there is nothing left to try. Give them this information. It could genuinely shift the trajectory of their health. Thank you for investing this time in your own well-being. Don't forget to subscribe for more content built specifically around the health challenges that matter most after 60. And remember, the first step toward protecting your nerves is identifying what's damaging them. You have far more control over this than anyone has told you. I'm Dr. Richard Holloway. Stay informed, stay proactive, and I'll see you in the next one.